All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. We are here today to present regarding the Northeastern North Carolina Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. I am Landon Holland, joined by Chris Noble, County Manager, to my right. Um, so, my name is Landon Holland. I work with Holland Consulting Planners. We have worked in the county for 20 plus years, dealing with various mitigation projects. So a lot of the elevations you see throughout the county, as well as probably some acquisitions over time and reconstructions. We have worked on, for like I said, roughly 20 years, dating back to Hurricane Floyd. So as a part of that effort, the federal, state, and federal governments require that the county maintain a hazard mitigation plan. So I will get into what this plan is, what the contents are, and what the requirements are of the county as we move through the presentation. This is roughly probably the fourth version of this plan, dating back to 1998, 2000. Originally, the county did develop their own mitigation plan, and over time, the state, due to mainly to funding considerations, have moved to a regional concept. So at this point, Hyde County is participating in a plan with Washington, Bertie, Martin, Terrell, and then also Hyde County. We have held roughly 4 meetings, regional meetings. Hyde County has been present at several of those meetings. We are holding this meeting to ensure that the county is in compliance with the community rating system program. I do not get into the community rating system program too much in this presentation, but that is the basis, main basis of holding this meeting here today, is to make sure that the county will maximize their point or credit potential in relation to the community rating system. And Chris, is the county an 8? 8, yes. So the county is an 8, which results in a 15% reduction in flood insurance costs for all policyholders throughout the county. So it's very important that the county not only maintain that score of an 8, but also look to move up the rating sheet up to a 7 or possibly 6. But whatever we can do to pick up points, the county gets audited on a 5-year cycle. And so whatever we can do in terms of the plan to maximize the point potential, it would possibly open the door to the county improving that score. However, there's many factors that would be involved in that consideration.
Presentation?
Yes, sir. So we're going to move into the presentation here. Mr. Gibbs, the Emergency Management Director, is on the call as well. I don't know how many people from the public are present, but we are going to hold a.
And we have Natalie Wayne and Daniel Brin also watching from Hyde County.
So we are going to take questions at the end of the presentation. So I will move through the presentation. Should take about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we can answer any questions that you all may have regarding this project or mitigation in general. So the agenda today, you aren't here present to hand these out, so we'll run through it real quick. We're going to talk about the planning process, what we've done, the structure of the plan. We will cover community annexes and what those entail, talk about the hazards that are addressed, goals and objectives included in the plan, the action plan, statements within the document, plan implementation and maintenance, talk about the completion of the planning process, and then towards the tail end, I just wanted to talk briefly about mitigation within Hyde County over the last 10 years. So active structural mitigation that we have carried out on behalf of the county or with the county over the last 10-year period. So when we talk about the planning process, as I said, we had 4 regional meetings. These meetings were scattered throughout the 5-county region, rather. We did hold one of those in Hyde County. I believe that was the 3rd meeting. And aside from that, we had 2 public meetings. One public meeting was after the 2nd regional committee meeting. The second was after the 4th regional committee meeting. Today's meeting will suffice for both a public meeting due to the advertisement as well as a committee meeting. So staff is present, and we have also advertised to the public. So we're giving an additional opportunity to county residents to weigh in, provide any input that you would like in regard to the mitigation plan and process. So we talk about the steps in the planning process. Initially, we look at organizing the plan and involving the public. So we reached out to the county. The county has 2 staff representatives involved in the overall process and 2 at-large stakeholder participants. So to all 4 meetings, those the staff as well as the stakeholders were invited and asked to participate. We have a website that the draft plan is posted on that is currently available. I will give everyone the URL to that draft document towards the tail end of the presentation. You know, I'll go over this again, but if following today's meeting, I will give you contact information to myself as well as our project partners, Wood Engineering out of Raleigh. And if you all have any comments, input, etc., feel free to email that to us, and we will make sure that it is considered and potentially incorporated into the document prior to adoption. So the 4th step of coordination, that's coordinated with the community, as I said, getting the stakeholders involved, and also coordinating with each local unit of government to make sure that we are aware of all of their capabilities, ordinances, and just the basic tone of the local condition in terms of flooding and the impact that various hazards have had on the community. So I did not mention this in the introduction, but every county has to have this plan, but also every municipality. Hyde County does not have, obviously, any incorporated jurisdictions, so that is not an issue in Hyde County, but say Martin County has, I think, 10 or 11 municipalities. So in Martin County, it's the county as well as the 11 municipal jurisdictions that have to deal with developing and then adopting the plan. So it makes things a little easier here in Hyde County in that we do not have to deal with any municipal entities in terms of the planning process. So we look at assessing the hazard and assessing the problem. So what are the hazards that impact the county, which I'll get into in the presentation, and what are the problems? What are the key areas that the key problems facing the county in relation to what we really are looking at in Hyde County is flooding, hurricanes, flooding, storm surge, etc. So things associated with nor'easters, hurricanes, those are really the 2 major impacts to Hyde County. That's what we've looked at over time. The active mitigation efforts within the county center around localized flooding or flooding associated with tropical storm events. So that's really the main focus of what we address within the Hyde County portion of the goals and strategies. We do also talk about, address tornadoes, drought, all of these various things. But if you look through the strategies, it's we hit very heavy on the flooding, the impacts of flooding, and looking to mitigate that to the maximum extent possible. So as we look at the problem, we worked with each community to establish, the region at large. So we have region-wide goals, and then we have mitigation activities and action plan for each jurisdiction. So each municipal as well as county jurisdiction, obviously in Hyde not involving any municipal jurisdictions, we have activities and an action plan, action statements that the county will carry out over the next 5-year period. If I didn't mention this, this plan is updated on a 5-year cycle. So we started drafting this plan about a year ago, 8 months ago. I think the deadline for the Northeast plan is early next year, I believe. So I will go into the next steps in the planning process towards the end of the presentation and kind of go over what needs to happen to ultimately get to the adoption of the plan, which is step 9. And then step 10 would be to implement the action statements, evaluate the plan, and revise the plan as need be. So much like a land use plan, if you have let's say a storm event like Dorian, you would want to revisit that plan, much like an emergency operations plan, and look at what has occurred within the county and basically lay out the steps necessary to avoid that same impact in the future. So That is our goal in terms of drafting the action statements and strategies. So I'm going to go over this portion of the presentation in detail. So I break these out in the next few slides. So I'll leave this up for a second. I will not read these because I will go over them specifically over the next few slides. But this is the outline of the document itself. So what you see here is section by section what you will see when you go onto the website and review that draft plan. So moving into that structure, the initial portion of the plan is the introduction. We talk about background and as well as purpose and authority. Purpose and authority is the basic statement of the fact that this is required not only by the North Carolina State Legislature under North Carolina Senate Bill 300, but also the federal government in relation to the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. So what this plan does is it opens a door for funding under these mitigation programs, whether it's what we would call flood mitigation assistance or FMA, which I will allude to later in the presentation. But so in order to secure that funding, whether it is on an annual basis, so the county can go in and apply for mitigation funding annually and maybe get 2, 3, 4 houses funded for elevation, but also after a storm. So in Dorian, I will hit on the numbers. Ms. Noble here will go over some of the preliminary numbers in terms of Dorian and the mitigation efforts relating to that storm. But so whether it's annual funding or post-disaster funding, this plan is not updated and approved on a 5-year interval, then that funding is not available. So if a county, let's say Hyde County, did not have this plan, the Dorian application goes in, there's 100 houses, those houses would not be funded. That's not the case. That's why we're here today, to make sure that this is completed, ready, and adopted in a timely manner to assure that the county is prepared for that funding opportunity. We go over the scope, talk about references and the general organization of the plan and that introduction as well. When we talk about planning process, I generally just went through the planning process, so I will not get into too much detail. We talked about the planning committee and the composition of that committee. So that was the 2 staff members, which was Justin Gibbs and Chris Noble, County Manager Chris Noble, as well as 2 stakeholders, which I do not have those names in front of me. I apologize. If anybody is interested in that, I can pull that information together for you. We talk about the meetings, how we involve the public, outreach. You know, our main thing with outreach was we did maintain a project website. Again, I will provide that URL. I believe off the top of my head, it's northeasternhmp.com, northeasternhmp.com. If that is not correct, we will get to it. But if you are in front of your computer and wanted to pull that up, you could do so at this time and take a look at the website. It has all of the minutes from the meetings we held. It has the agendas. It also has the existing plan as well as a full copy of the current draft plan for review. So it also provides a page for comment. So if you do look at the plan, you don't have to email us directly. You could actually provide comment through the project website. Section 3, the planning area profiles. This is basically generally a community profile. Much like a land use plan, we talk about geography and climate, demographics, the lay of the land, what's developed, undeveloped, how many properties were built before and after the institution of the NFIP and the flood damage prevention standards. So, you know, you kind of have an idea of how many properties out there that are were developed prior to current floodplain regulation. Keeping in mind the floodplain regulations within Hyde County the standard has increased over time. So what was elevated to standard 15, 20 years ago is not necessarily the case today. So obviously check with the local building inspector if you have any questions specific to housing elevation and base flood elevations for new structures or existing as well. We talk about historic properties, housing, infrastructure, and there is a pretty general, fairly broad overview of future land use within that section as well. Since Hyde County is a community rating system jurisdiction, we do provide some additional information in terms of appendices within the plan to accommodate the CRS standard. Again, when this plan is completed, the community rating system, I believe Mandy Todd, do you work with Mandy? Mandy Todd with the community rating system will rate or score the plan. So as we have developed the document, we have worked very hard to make sure that the point potential is maximized. David Stroud, who works with Wood Engineering, actually worked with the community rating system for 20 plus years. And worked with Mandy Todd for a lot of those years. So he has a very good, strong understanding of the community rating system. And we feel very good about the fact that the county should get maximum points for the document when it is reviewed. Moving on to section 4 is the risk assessment. This is a pretty hefty portion of the plan. It's probably 300 pages long. So I will get into the hazards here in a second, but each hazard, so if we take flooding, and we went over this, if you go into look at the presentation for the third meeting, we go into a fair amount of detail in terms of the risk assessment. The state has moved to an automated planning system. So a lot of the information is entered into what is called the HIRA. It's a hazard identification and risk assessment. So the information is entered into this HIRA system, and then for each individual hazard, it breaks down in great detail the number of structures that are at risk, the critical facilities. When I say critical facilities, I mean county buildings, schools, which also serve as shelters, fire stations, all these various facilities that are deemed critical for day-to-day operations of the county, which are at risk for each individual hazard. So you will see a section for wildfire, flood, drought, tornado, et cetera, down the line. And again, I will cover those hazards here in the next few slides. But so as you move through it, you'll see it's a great deal of information for each individual hazard. It's a pretty hefty portion of the document, but hopefully the information will be useful, especially if the county utilizes it moving forward for other planning purposes, land use planning, or any other land development regulation considerations. Fifth section, capability assessment. The basic premise of this portion of the plan is what capabilities the county has in terms of service delivery and community services. So do they have a zoning ordinance? Do they have subdivision regulations? Do they have emergency operations plan? Do they have a capital improvements plan? So it's a very detailed breakdown of various mechanisms the county has, basically defining the county's ability to implement the strategies that are outlined within the plan. We cover the authority to spend in terms of tax dollars. They have the ability to collect tax dollars, spend tax dollars, which opens the door for them to implement various capital improvements projects that are outlined in the strategy section, which is section 6. So that's the basic purpose of the section 5 and the capability assessment, is to say that the county has the ability to actually carry out the implementation strategies that are defined. Section 6 and 7 are the strategy statements. I will get into that a bit more here in a second. The action plan, as I said, we have a table I'm going to go over and explain to everyone what is involved in that table and how you should read that and review it as you go through the draft plan. Plan maintenance talks about moving forward, implementation, monitoring the plan, and continued public involvement. As a CRS community, the county should be reporting on the implementation of the plan on a quarterly basis. So that is something where the county would report to the commissioners on the implementation and effectiveness of the mitigation plan itself. That would be documented in the minutes. And again, that would play into that 5-year audit by the CRS program to make sure that, the county is maximizing that point potential. And then lastly, plan adoption, that section that's where we have the resolution of adoption and the certification letter from FEMA saying that now Hyde County is certified for another 5 years. And basically they'll see us again in 4 years to review the plan once again. So when I'm looking back at the structure of the plan, when we look at the community annexes, it's a little different in Hyde since we don't have any municipal jurisdictions. So when I do speak to the counties that have municipal entities, we want to make it clear that each individual municipal jurisdiction has an annex as well as the county at large. So again, that will not impact Hyde County, but within Martin County, I keep using them as an example, but so all 10 or 11 municipalities have a community annex as well as Martin County. So it's all presented under the county at large within Hyde. I think we do break out Englehart, Swan Quarter, some of the census, the term is escaping me, but they're identified by census. They're not municipality. Yeah, but yeah, so they did break out within the census information for, I know it's Englehart, Swan Quarter, maybe Scranton. There were 4 that were identified in these census numbers. So we did break it out in that manner. There is a little higher level of detail there than the county overall. When we look at the community annexes, this is Washington County. This is we used various examples throughout the region in this presentation. So you'll see Washington County here. If you pull up Hyde, it'd be a very exact same scenario. So what you see on the left, and I don't know how well you can see it, but we have a breakdown of community facilities and the number that are impacted by various hazards. And so the information is all presented and then mapped, as you can see on the right side. So we basically go through, do an asset inventory of what the county has available, where it is located, and what hazards impact the various critical or county facilities. Here's another example on the community annexes. This talks about development since 2011. It's extremely detailed, talks about the numbers in terms of new growth that has occurred within the county or development activity for not only housing and commercial operations, but also community facilities. I will warn everyone that looks at this information that we have found issues with these numbers. And I've looked at Hyde County. I think it's probably especially egregious in Hyde County because a lot of this is based on algorithms built into this software. The state is requiring that we use this software. So if you do look through this portion of the plan for Hyde County, please take note and be aware that the numbers will probably not look great. And if you do take specific issue with those numbers, please send me an email and I will present it to the state, because we are making the case to not utilize this system under the next round of updates. That would be ideal. We used to come and work directly with the county independently through this process. So last time we did this update, we had 3 counties within 3 meetings within Hyde County, specifically only for Hyde County, where we can sit around the table and have a constructive discussion about what needs to be done, how it can be done, where now we have been pushed into a situation whereby we're working with the region at large, and it's very difficult to have meaningful discussions within a room with 5 counties involved. You have 50, 60 people representing all different jurisdictions. So, if you do review this information, just be aware it doesn't look great, and it's probably going to look off. And we're just asking that the communities provide feedback or input to us so that we can present that back to the state to point out the issues that we see with the data that was utilized for this portion of the plan. So in terms of the hazards that we have profiled, I kept referring to this: dam and levee failure, drought, earthquake, extreme heat, flood, hurricane, tropical storm, severe weather, including thunderstorm, wind, lightning, and hail, severe winter storm, tornado, wildfire, coastal erosion, and sinkholes. So when we go back to that section 4, the hazard identification and risk assessment portion of the plan, all development considerations, critical facilities, each one of these hazards, there's probably 10 to 15 pages for each hazard, reviewing what's at risk. There are maps of portions of the county that are impacted by these various hazards. For instance, a tornado would impact the whole county the same way. So the whole county is considered in terms of the impact area, where there are certain portions of the county that are more susceptible to wildfire, obviously coastal erosion, things like flooding. We have the flood zones to work from, as well as storm surge information for hurricanes. So when we get into flooding, hurricanes, tropical storms, the risk assessment is more specific to the areas that portions of the county that are vulnerable to those various hazards, whereby things like extreme heat, tornado, drought, etc., those obviously impact the entire county equally. So anyway, when you go back to section 4, these are the hazards that you will see, and they are, we provide a fair level of detail in terms of what's at risk. I do have the goals and objectives within the presentation. This is something we have actually reviewed at the last 2 or 3 meetings at the regional level. I certainly will not sit here and read through these. My main point, and we've kind of, as we went through the regional committee meetings, we would review them at each meeting and make sure, does anybody have any further comments on the goals and objectives? So what we have here is a goal. We have goal 1, let's say, then objective 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then we have specific mitigation actions, which you will see on another slide after this one. So each action falls under an objective, which falls under a goal. So you can draw a line from a goal to an objective to a strategy, and that is the way that they require us to structure the plan. So again, I will not read through these goals and objectives. Not only are they available through this presentation, which we will get onto the website after today's meeting, but they are also detailed within the draft plan, which is available at northeasternhnp.com. This is goal 3 and 4, as well as objectives 3.1, 3.2, 4.1, and 4.2. So again, you can take a look at those, and if you have any, these are fairly solidified at this point. We did not receive we had some initial comments, but we worked through those. I think these serve the needs for all of the communities throughout the Northeastern region. So this is an example of the strategy table. This one is from Bertie, so we kind of scattered the various communities throughout this presentation, but hides will look identical to the strategy table you have before you. And I would recommend, obviously I cannot read this. I don't know if you all can on your screens, but what we have is the strategy number. We have the description of the strategy, the jurisdictions or applicable jurisdictions, which within Hyde County is Hyde County. So we do not have the issue of which municipalities does it impact or not impact. Then we talk about the hazards that are addressed, the priority, and then the goal and objective that it meets. We talk about the responsible parties, so who is responsible for carrying it out. And then the next 2 or 3 talk about time frames, and then we have comments on the far right side. My main point in showing you this is really the heart of the document. If you want to basically review what the county is saying they are going to do over the next 5 years in relation to mitigation, this is, if you're not going to look at any other portion of the document, review the strategy table. It will look identical to what you see here on the screen. This is where we would ask that if you have any additional input or would like any new strategies incorporated, please let us know. We will work with county staff to get that added into this strategy table prior to adoption of the plan. The plan is about to go under review by the state, but we still have some time to make minor modifications prior to adoption. So as you can see here, this is the implementation and maintenance portion of the document that I think it's section 8 of the plan itself. You can see in this first bullet, non-CRS communities report annually, but a CRS community should conduct reviews quarterly. I think essentially all this can amount to the staff incorporating it into reports to the Board of Commissioners that would then be, adopted, trying to say at the beginning of the meeting, so it could be adopted. At the beginning when they adopt
Resolution?
Well, they were, like staff reports and things that they would adopt at one time. Well, anyway, if it was incorporated into a staff report, it's not something that has to be an agenda item at a commissioner's meeting, is my point. The county just simply needs to review the plan, report to the commissioners what is going on so that is documented in the file. So when the CRS audit, 5-year audit occurs, that it is documented that quarterly review did take place. That's what's important. The county will continue to pursue implementation of mitigation actions, monitor funding opportunities, which is something Hyde County utilizes the mitigation funding program as well as anybody in the state that I'm aware of. So we certainly will continue to monitor that closely. Continue public involvement. That's just making the public aware of what's happening, what's going on, educating the public. A big part of the strategies speaks to the fact that the county provides educational opportunities to citizens as well as the contractor or building community in terms of what options are available for flood mitigation on, let's say, single family homes or commercial structures. So how can you retrofit an existing structure to minimize the impacts of flooding on that given property? So the county staff maintains educational materials and information to educate the public as well as building community about those issues, and will continue to do so as a function of the implementation of the mitigation plan. County will consider this plan when looking at other planning efforts. So if there was planning activities or land use planning or master planning efforts that take place, let's say in Ocracoke following Dorian, maybe information from this plan or recommendations from this plan, should be considered through those planning efforts if and when that does transpire. And again, the plan will continue to be updated on a 5-year cycle. So in order to complete the planning process, we are going to finalize all draft portions of the plan. Our main concern in relation to that is making sure that the county, the staff, as well as the public at large does not have any comments based on this presentation. This is a good opportunity. We're here in the county presenting to you all virtually online. So hopefully we're reaching a few people. We don't typically have that luxury when we work through this planning process. A lot of the public meetings we hold for this are at 5:30 in, let's say, Lenoir County or in, say, Bertie County, for instance, or what have you. So we generally do not get a lot of participation. So this is a unique opportunity. Hopefully we're reaching some people and you all will take a look at the draft document, provide some comment or feedback. Once we are done with the draft plan, the draft will be submitted to the state for review. Typically they have a 45-day review period, followed by a FEMA review, a FEMA 45-day review period. Now the plan may be adopted during that review or at the tail end of that review. It really remains to be seen. It depends on how long that review takes. There are some communities where we are adopting the document prior to the final review. Historically, the plan will be reviewed and all edits made based on the state and FEMA review of the plan before adoption. So we'll wait and see how that goes. But bottom line is the plan will be adopted and certified prior to that expiration date of, I believe, late January, early February of 2021. And then once approved, this doesn't apply to Hyde County, but all municipal jurisdictions must also adopt a plan that does not impact this community. So I want to talk briefly about mitigation within Hyde County over the last 10 years. Mrs. Noble is here, and I will let her speak to Florence, Dorian, and FY18. But so since 2010, in FY 2011, there was a flood mitigation assistance project that is an annually funded project. So 4 homes were elevated under the Hurricane Irene. It was a rescopement project. So there was funding that was not utilized. It was rescoped into a new project whereby the county carried out 8 elevations and 2 reconstructions. So the reconstructions were essentially demolitions of flooded or impacted homes, and new construction took place on those sites at base flood elevation. So essentially removing that structure from the floodplain that is our goal. And seeing as it's very difficult within a community like Hyde County, that's why buyouts don't occur, because if you buy a home out within a flood hazard area, you must relocate with utilizing funding that is available for relocation outside of the floodplain. So it becomes a tax-based issue. Hyde County is not unique. Belhaven is another excellent example of a community where if acquisition was afforded that community after Hurricane Floyd, half of the town's tax base would have been eliminated. So elevation becomes a very attractive option for communities that are dealing with that tax base issue or problem. Under FY15, that was an annually funded flood mitigation assistance project. There was a reconstruction of 1 home on site, and FY16 FMA, 3 homes were elevated. So those numbers pale in comparison to hopefully what we will see under the Dorian and Florence efforts, as well as FY18 FMA, and I will turn that over to Mrs. Noble.
Sir Landon, thank you for that update and bringing us up to the present. And I will give you a brief update on our current projects. And if anyone has any specific questions in regard to units, you can ask here today, or you can always email me at knoble@hydecounty.nc.gov. We are finishing our Irene rescopement projects now and looking forward to our Florence and Dorian projects. We did apply for and received 1 project under Matthew, and that was an infrastructure project that we're working on now to complete. Our Florence, as you know, Florence impacted really dramatically at Currituck Township, Slaysville and Scranton, with minimal impacts to Ocracoke Island. Dorian, of course, completely destroyed Ocracoke Island. And so we have just been able to work with the state to put in 114 HMGP applications for Hurricane Dorian. We were pleased to get those applications in queue, and the state's working diligently to potentially fund those projects. So finished the Irene rescopement. We have 1 Matthew infrastructure. We have a handful of Florence projects that are mainly in Currituck Township, and just finishing the mass of Dorian applications that we've got into the state just this month. In addition, so Landon's talked to you a little bit about hazard mitigation grant program, funding elevations, reconstructions, acquisitions. Hyde County also participates diligently in funding for FMA projects, flood mitigation assistance, PDA projects, pre-disaster assistance. Any type of notice of funding availability that comes across our desk or we're able to receive from our partners at Holland Consulting Planners, we look diligently to find the funding to meet those needs. If you have any of those needs, you need to submit a common housing application to us so that when those notices of funding availability become open, we have your information available. Again, if you're interested in that, you can also send me an email, knoble@hydecounty.nc.gov. Thank you. Donnie's going to post that email on this post, so you don't have to find something to write with. He'll make sure that information's available. It's also on our website. In addition to the HMGP funding, the FMA funding, the PDA funding that Landon's specifically talking about, Hyde County also, in regard to mitigation, works continually and has worked continually the last few years to upgrade our drainage associations. We've done active work in the Swan Quarter Watershed, the Fairfield Drainage Association, Mattamuskeet Association. We have received generous funding for the Mattamuskeet Restoration Project, which has a water and flood control element, in addition to working with Slocum Drainage and individual landowners to mitigate in that way. And we have done a ton of storm debris removal over the last few years. Hyde County has been very well poised in taking advantage of millions of dollars of stream debris removal funding that's been available to us. We partner with DOT Highway, the Park Service, and the Ferry Division to mitigate along Highway 12 and also to mitigate at our ferry terminals. And anytime the county's involved in the construction of critical facilities, we look for any type of creative mechanisms for mitigation, including elevation and any type of mitigation we're able to incorporate into those construction projects. So our critical facilities are strong. That's a brief overview of our current mitigation activities.
So I kept alluding to the URL. I was right. It is Northeastern HMP, so I did not steer you wrong there if you've gone to take a look at that. You can see here the draft plan is available at northeasternhmp.com/draft-documents.html. If you go to the main page, though, it's pretty easy to navigate. So you can go on there. The agendas and minutes from the committee meetings are available, as well as that draft plan and the existing plan is on the website as well. So if you have any comments, I will give you my email address. I think it's on the next slide. But if you can email abigail.moore@woodplc.com. She will be tying up the loose ends for the draft plan and getting those into the state. However, in terms of Hyde County, I believe I'm on the next slide. If not, I will give you my email address as well as Cindy in our office. And I would, ask either get them through the website to us or to county staff, or you can email us directly. But we would like to work with the county to incorporate any additional strategy statements into the plan. We don't want to just pass that off to Wood at this point, since we have been working closely with the county and do work closely with the county on their mitigation efforts. Yeah, here we go. So this is the contact information with the Wood Group. We have David Stroud. I alluded to him earlier in terms of the working with the CRS program. Abby or Abigail Moore, that is who I've worked most with in terms of Wood to develop the draft plan. Again, I'm Landon Holland with Holland Consulting Planners, and I'm working closely with Cindy Anderson in our office. She has been the point of contact in terms of communication as we've moved through the various committee meetings and public meetings as well. So again, this contact information is on the website, but this presentation will be added to the website as well. So all of this information will be available. Like I said, if you do have any input, please contact us. You can copy Abby as well, but let us know so that we can stay on top of things and make sure that it gets addressed. And with that, I can answer any questions. But I do appreciate everyone that did attend being here. this is unique to me, so this virtual meeting scenario, but seems to work quite well. So everyone stay safe, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Landon.